The stellar extent. Interstellar, relating to a single star stellar systems occurring or situated between stars. Extrastellar, relating to single compact star, stellar remnants, and multi-star stellar systems occurring or situated between black holes, groups of stars, or stellar systems. Introduction. The stellar implies star and stellar nucleosynthesis to include compact star or stellar remnant. This extent of stars, solar system, and stellar clusters is the foundation upon which the stellar scale civilization is built upon. When entities directly harvest material and energy directly from a star and as an emergent quality stop being exclusively dependent on material and energy at the celestial scale, these entities and their civilization, which are powered by stellar furnaces, are stellar civilization. Unified governments are not necessary but can be an emergent quality at the stellar scale. The only requirement is a direct dependence on stellar bodies for all their material and energy. Stellar filament extent. The stellar is an astronomical object consisting of a luminous spheroid and plasma held together by its own gravity, also known as stars, and locally for the extent of an orbiting planet as the Sun or the Sun. The primary attribute of the stellar extent is gravitational powered nuclear fusion, which generates both heat and light. The total mass of the stellar directly affects its size. The composition of its gaseous, which fuel its nuclear fission, give the stellar its final attribute, longevity. It's easy to anamorphize the stellar, describing or associating its natural process with life or treating it as if it is alive. It is from this process that the term main sequence was generated, derived from the natural tendency for stars to form a linear path when graph which can be associated with stars at different stages within its life cycle, for lack of a better term. A star formed through accretion to some mass, its core primary comprises of hydrogen at some point around 0.08 solar masses. Nuclear fusion can begin and be sustainable, after which the star will burn or fuse all the hydrogen in its core, converting it into helium. Once there is no more hydrogen, the star will begin the process of fusing helium. Helium burns hotter compared to hydrogen. This causes the star to swell and expand, burning hotter and brighter with more surface area. This process continues for the rest of the star's life, as each chemical element is fused. The next chemical element is fused until the star reaches the chemical element iron. No matter how massive a star becomes, iron within a star's core cannot be fused in any way that yields a net gain of energy. This causes stars to cool and collapse. A collapsing star is called a supernova. It erupts with an explosion that causes the outer layer of the stellar core to be blown out, forming a planetary nebula around the remnants of the stellar core. For every size and mass of each star, the remnants of the core, which form a compact star, white dwarf, black dwarf, or neutron star as a byproduct. In the most extreme case, a supernova explosion will compress the stellar remnants into a black hole. Black holes are final transcended form of a stellar body. The largest stellar black holes are around 150 square meters. There is a curious gap in the linear progression from 150 square meter black hole to the supermassive black holes that begin at around 1 million solar masses. External celestial regress, 1 divided by 4 compact stars, quasi-stars, and black holes. The compact star refers collectively to white dwarfs, neutron stars, pulsar exotic stars, and black holes. The compact star is the final stage of the main sequence star-stellar cycle. Once its core uses up the last of its fuel, its atomous shell of lighter gases are blown off and then become hot, bright, and dense. All compact stars have high mass relative to their radius, giving them a very high density compared to ordinary atomic matter. Quasistar is a hypothetical type of extremely massive and luminous star that may have existed early in the history of the universe. Unlike modern stars, which are powered by nuclear fusion in their core, a quasistar's energy would come from material falling into a black hole at its core. Medial celestial regress 1 over 8 giants, supergiants, hypergiants, and quasistars. Giant stellar bodies is a star with substantially larger radius and luminosity than a main sequence or dwarf star of the same surface temperature. The fusion of hydrogen in the core of stars is powered by the presence of natural gravitation. The more mass a star has, the faster it can fuse the elements in its core. In this way, giant, supergiants, and hypergiant stars have much shorter lifespans than main sequence stars of the same volume with far less mass. Interior celestial regress 1 all over 16 gas giants, sub-brown dwarfs, main sequence. The average size, mass, luminosity, and temperature of stellar objects in the observable universe is known as the main sequence. These stars vary in all property and attributes considerably, but when shattered on a diagram, they form a linear progression based on the relationship between their volume, mass, temperature, and brightness. On average, these stars are referred to main sequence dwarf stars. As dwarf stars burn through all of their fuel, they undergo changes with regards to their mass, volume, temperature, and brightness. High volume stars with low comparable mass, which are also hotter and brighter, are considered second stage main sequence stars. They are the same size as giant stars, while being less massive, having a mass more in common to that of a dwarf star. From these, we have determined that stellar bodies have life cycles that they undergo throughout their existence. The smallest main sequence stars are red dwarf stars. These stars are exponentially smaller than most other dwarf stars classified on their main sequence. In fact, red dwarfs are so small that they are quite difficult to distinguish between them and brown dwarfs. A red dwarf is a true member of the celestial. It has enough mass to sustain hydrogen fission, and it has the correct composition as to not fall into the category of a hot celestial world. Brown dwarfs are in essence dense celestial gas giants. The volume of a celestial gas giant has an upper limit. As more mass is added, the gaseous giants do not gain volume. Instead, the added mass causes them to become more dense. At some mass to volume ratio, they will begin to shrink before transforming into red dwarf. The regress between a massive celestial gas giant and a low mass stellar dwarf is where the term brown dwarf was originated. Celestial filament regress 1 over 32nd accretion disk, planetary nebula, and solar system formatting. For the context of this body of work, there are two qualities that we use to define a star: how massive it is, as the mass of a star also governs stellar nuclear synthesis, and how hot or bright a star is. The brightest and hottest stars form the medial celestial regress. The composition of a stellar and the composition of a celestial are dynamically different. Solar systems are formed from the molecular clouds, nebula, gaseous tens of thousands of light years in volume. When star formation within these molecular clouds occur, they are called stellar nursery. The stellar extent forms when these gaseous collapse, forming astronomical objects. If the composition is correct, a stellar body is born. These masses of gaseous clouds will contract under the influence of gravitation, first forming an accretion disk. At the center of this accretion disk, protostellar masses will form slowly. They will consume all the matter around them, giving rise to multistellar system. Before the stellar masses have sufficient mass to ignite fission and radiate heat and light, within the photoplanetary disk, If there is sufficient composition, protoplanets will form, giving rise to the earliest form of the newly forming stellar system, the stellar extent, the mythological creation of the stellar extent. In classic mythology, the stellar is the domain of the deities, gods, and goddesses. A demigod or demigoddess is part human and part divine offspring of a deity and a human, or a human or non-human creature that is accorded divine status after death, or someone who has attained the divine spark, spiritual enlightenment. The deity, gods, and goddesses have mortal, half gods, descendants primarily of the union between the creator gods and the creator mortals. In mythology, a solar deity, goddess, or god was the embodiment of the sun or the anamorphic avatar or guardian of the sun personified. These are the monotheistic ruler of stellar systems. The stellar is the extent of the classical use of the term plane in the sense of scale. A plane is regress within a realm, and star are a regress of a galaxy. In Egyptian mythology, the god Amen, Atum, Re, and his offspring Asa and Aset are deities being, which can be equated with the sun. There must exist a god for the demi-deity, god, goddess, to be manifested from. The solar or stellar deity typically exists transcendent above the demi, from which the demi are created or manifested from. The solar deity may also favor a mortal, anointing them in the process. To include divine prophets, the anointed and sorcerer drawing divine magic form the deity that is served. These beings have strength to rival the gods themselves while still being subject to their mercy. The creator gods relative to each other were more or less equal. Conflict would be at a state of perpetual stagnation until a demigod champion was added to the playing field, shifting the balance of power in the favor of the deity, god, or goddesses the hero chooses to obey. In most cases, the hero would choose to serve the greater good of humanity and the good whose ideology must align with the demigod or demigoddesses cause would benefit from their efforts. The empirical cosmology of the stellar extent. The stellar ontology is between 1 times 10 raised to the powers of 11 to 1 times 10 raised to the powers of 20 meter in volume, defined as a regress. While rare it's possible for a single being to embody as its standard unit of measurement less than 1 times 10 raised to the powers of 20 meters. If a single being's standard unit of measurement exceed this, they would manifest as a galactic. At the smallest of scale, a single stellar being would embody 1 times 10 raised to the powers of 11 meters in volume. If a single being's standard unit of measurement is less than or smaller than this, then they would manifest as the celestial. The stellar is the regress of the brown dwarf. The stellar scale is between 1,000 km to 1 billion km. The extent of the stellar influence is between 1 billion to 1 quintillion km. In the context of the My02cent Civilization scale, single stellar system does not describe the extent of a type 3.99 civilization. A single solar system to include a stable multistellar solar system is the introduction to becoming a type 3.0 civilization. The extent of a globular cluster is the foundation of a true type 3.99 civilization. The stellar extent is comprised of the stellar bodies, which make it its gravitational center, and all the regress in the form of stellar satellites which are bound gravitationally to it. In astronomy, the barycenter is the center of mass of 2 or more bodies that orbit one another. Bodies of mass orbit barycenter to form astronomical system. Astronomical system as a whole orbit each other to form astronomical cluster or sectors. Most stellar bodies form this foundation of a single solar system with satellites, celestial bodies, sharing a common barycenter with them said to be in orbit around them. Multiple stellar bodies can all orbit the same common barycenter. In this context, these stellar bodies are all a part of the same stellar system. It is possible for each stellar body to have stable celestial satellites in orbit around them in the form of planets. This is contrast against globular cluster. Stellar clusters are a collection of stars which are very tightly bound by gravity to each other, giving them their spherical shapes and high concentrations of stars toward their barycenter, forming an astronomical cluster. An easy way to think of it is that stellar systems are stars and their satellite celestial systems, whereas a stellar cluster is a collection or group of stellar systems all sharing the same gravitational influence. The My02cent multiverse cosmology of the stellar extent. What truly is the extent of the stellar? The celestial and below forms the foundation of habitability for entities below the stellar extent. Sub-brown dwarf within the context of the My02cent multiverse cosmology. The stellar extent is comprised of the celestial regress. It's true that stellar implies to a star or the sun. Yet, in the context of this body of work, when we say stellar extent, we are communicating with the ontology, which is strongly influenced directly by the influences, forces, laws, and constants that govern the stellar bodies, as well as the locality and temporality wherewithin it is occupied. The space between planets orbiting the same parent stellar body is embodied by the notion of the stellar extent. The space between stellar bodies, the extrastellar medium encompasses within the extent of a globular cluster is implied by the stellar extent as well. Beyond the globular cluster extent, we begin to describe the regress of the galactic. The stellar citizen, the mythology of the stellar citizen. In Egyptian mythology, Apep, the god servant of chaos, would attack the sun each night, attempting to devour it. The sun god Re and his son Set would defend the sun against Apep each night to prevent the world from plunging into eternal darkness. Set's brother Atum will be pharaoh of mankind, inspiring humanity as a just and kind ruler. Envy would fill Set's heart, and his desire to rule would consume him, distracting him from his divine duty as guardian of the sun. Succumbing to chaos, Set would attack his brother, killing him and claiming himself the rightful ruler of humanity. His absence would allow Apep a chance to eat the sun, if not for his father, the sun god Re. The empirical stellar citizen 1 times 10 raised to the powers of 11 to 1 times 10 raised to the power 20. Within the context of this writing, there is a disconnect between understanding intrinsically what a citizen is and what is implied by the notion of a stellar citizen. By definition, a stellar citizen is a mundane citizen, a member of a celestial civilization which has astronautical technology, logistic, and infrastructure of some kind. This gives these mundane citizens their ability to traverse between the celestial as well as between the stellar extent. The disconnect exists in the reasoning that a celestial world is 1,000,000 times smaller than its parent stellar body, and while it takes a few days, weeks, or at most months to traverse the extent of even the largest of celestial worlds by a mundane citizen, the logistical difficulty of the mundane citizen attempting to traverse the stellar extent goes up by several order of magnitude. As an example, a mundane citizen's reaction mass rocket on a celestial world can get its mundane citizen anywhere in less than 30 standard minutes on its world at the celestial scale. The same rocket will travel for 3 days to traverse the distance between the celestial world and its natural satellite. To escape its celestial extent and travel to another celestial body within the extent of its parent stellar body would take as long as 2 standard years, with 6 months of continuous travel. To leave the stellar system and arrive at another star altogether would exceed the natural life expectancy of the mortal mundane citizen on board the craft. These issues are a byproduct of a scale regress. We perceive citizens at the mundane scale and imagine them as point particles traversing the stellar medium. This caused them to become less spatial individual and more temporal entities. The transition from thinking in terms of distance travels to thinking in terms of time spent traveling causes our linear cognition to slow and then disconnect as our perception becomes more and more convoluted. The stellar citizen operates at the scales of the stellar while not necessarily embodying the stellar extent within their nature. It's possible for a being to be equal in scale to the stellar extent. These beings would hold the celestial extent in the palm of their hands. The abstraction of such creature is beyond the introductory scope of this body of writing and would be on par with the gods themselves. The My02cent multiverse cosmological stellar citizen. The stellar is an ontology of the contrasting, encompassing extent beyond the regress of a celestial system. The monotheistic God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and present everywhere within the stellar ontology. The stellar ontology is the extent where within extra, alternate, or parallel celestial system exists. These celestial systems, to include stellar ontology, are equated to being divine entity, inheriting from their nature the maternal attributes of goddesses. The ontology of celestial systems form the foundation of the pantheon of polytheism. They are all siblings, sisters, and daughters of their maternal parent ontology. Stellar systems, where an ontological celestial system is a place. A divine stellar being, governed by stellar divinity, and known as stellar being androgynous gods, paternal or goddesses maternal. Their nature is extra, alternate, and parallel to the ontological celestial. In the context of My02cent multiverse cosmology, a stellar citizen is embodied within the logistics of traversing the extent of a stellar body, influences to include entire solar systems. The stellar scale is the range of stellar nuclear synthesis to include electromagnetic spectrum emission. The stellar scale includes the spectrum of a stellar body life cycle to include black holes. The correlative, alternate, and parallel extent of a stellar system to include extrastellar logistics and infrastructure. For the mundane distance, scale, and time are measured in units of meters, kilometers, days, or years. The stellar scale is measured with astrological units and deep time, billions of trillions of kilometers and millions or billions of years. The factors which separate the mundane from the stellar are difficult to quantify. The stellar civilization, the mythology of the stellar civilization. There is little in the way that I can abstract from mythology in regards to stellar empire apart from the notion and ideal of modern science fiction with regards to extraterrestrial. If we consider the idea that a mundane species can exist on the celestial of a single world in orbit around one stellar body, then it is reasonable to perceive how yet another separate and disconnected mundane species can exist on yet another world in orbit around yet another extra, alternate, or parallel star. If these beings have the capability in whatever context to physically traverse the medium which separates them, why this empirical understanding eludes us, this abstraction of the empirical reasoning demonstrates a mythological or paranormal quality. The empirical stellar civilization. Immortality speaking in the context of the mundane citizen operating at the stellar scale, the adversity of mortality, senescence, would be accounted for and resolved. At least the mundane would have their lives extended exponentially, and if they have not eliminated death, they psychologically would have evolved to better cope with death. Whereas tectonic and the celestial mostly deal with the subjective adversity of their extent. The objective challenges of the physical extent of operating at the scales of the stellar would supersede any ideology that once existed. Perhaps might even bring some of their old ways back. The natural celestial worlds indigenous to the mundane citizen of the stellar scale will benefit from a life on what would be perceived externally as a paradise as member, and their descendants venture outward into the harsh, unforgiving stellar extent. The stellar civilization will be built on the foundation of celestial scale logistics and infrastructure, utilized to extend their dependency on resources of their celestial world to directly control and manipulate their stellar body through technological, logistic, and infrastructure such as Dyson Sphere, Dyson Swarm, Skadov thrusters, Matryoshka brain, star lifting, astronautical, orbital space stations, satellites, and power generation stations, astronautical vehicle, vessels, and craft utilizing STL, FTL, and interstellar dimensional drives to include teleportation, hyperdrives, warp drives, and jump drives. The My02cent Multiverse Cosmological Stellar Civilization. In the context of this body of work, the My02cent Multiverse Cosmological Stellar Civilization should address the contradiction which derives from traveling through time and dimension. As stated by the initial premise, a civilization must harness, control, and utilize enormous amounts of power to qualify as a Type 3 civilization. By its nature, the ability of a mundane citizen to travel from one planet to another, either within their own stellar system or between stellar systems, qualifies them as a Type 3.0 civilization. What is less intuitive in the context of the stellar is what is implied if a mundane citizen is able to travel through dimension or through time. In essence, they have traveled from one celestial extent to another celestial extent, and this should be by its nature require a lot of energy or power to achieve. And so it is that a civilization that has the capacity in whatever form is manifest for its citizens to be able to travel interdimensional or intertemporally relatively safety qualifies as being a Type 3.0 civilization.